Thank you for joining us. Mike Hurst is with us, and we're going to talk a couple of things: the CRT, the school board, the Supreme Court, some of the edicts that came down from the administration. We'll do that on the other side of this break. But there was another story out there. We got word yesterday from the Biden administration about federal vaccine mandates that would affect nearly all workers in the private sector, and it's about as solid as a slice of Swiss cheese. Depends on. Here's what's happening. And I mean, this is happening at the highest level of the Biden administration. I sincerely believe this. People in power are making decisions so bad that they have to come back and backtrack because it could cause additional damage to the problems they've already caused. What I'm talking about is they've backtracked apparently on truck drivers, saying that they don't have to have the vaccine now. So I'm not sure if they're going to have to wear a mask if they're in the cab by themselves, but the supply chain is such he's made things worse as far as the supply chain is concerned.
Why is the price of agricultural products when I go to the store?
Now listen to this. Here's the president giving us, if you can't understand this, the clarity on this one is unbelievable.
Why is the price of agricultural products when I go to the store, why is it higher? Like for example, if we were all going out and having lunch together, and I said, let's ask whoever's in the next table, no matter what restaurant we're in, have them explain the supply chain to us. Think they'd understand what we're talking about? They're smart people, but supply chain. Well, why is everything backed up? Well, it's backed up because the people who supply the materials that end up being on our kitchen table or in our life. Guess what? They're closed those plants because they have COVID. They're not. So it's a complicated world that people are facing.
So here's what I would do. You know how you have a dog collar that you can have the shock? I would put a wristband on him, and whenever he's thinking about doing off script, certainly an analogy, I'd send a little shock out to him and just remind him, or either wake him up at that time. On the vaccine mandates, have you ever seen any subject out there, Mike, that is more divisive and tailor-made to tear right from left?
No.
No. It
this
really
is incredible.
It is incredible.
Yeah, and I'm glad to see our governor and our attorney general really standing up with other attorneys general throughout the country to really fight back and push back. I mean, this is what we conservatives fight for. We fight for local control, and to have a federal government overreaching to such an extent that they're mandating what we put into our bodies is incredible. And so I applaud the Fifth Circuit for putting a stay on this, and I hope the attorneys general continue to fight for our freedoms.
Do you think it's a pretty good case?
I do think it's a case. I haven't read the case yet. I've read about the case, but I think it's a pretty good chance.
Since you were at that level as far as a former U.S. attorney, your thoughts on the upcoming December from the Attorney General as far as the abortion deal?
Oh, the abortion deal is, I think it's pretty exciting because I think we have a Supreme Court that will actually follow the letter of the Constitution. And I think we have an Attorney General who has put together a brief and an argument that really stands for what the Constitution says and not what a couple of judges on the Supreme Court from 50 years ago said it is.
Somebody asked me the question several days ago, why hasn't this been done before? It seems apparent, and I couldn't answer that.
Well, I don't think it was the right timing. I mean, life is about timing.
Because of the makeup of the Supreme
That's
Court.
exactly right. I mean, we finally have a court that views the Constitution for what it actually says. And this is an opportunity to actually go back, correct the wrongs that have been done by activist Supreme Courts in the past, and make sure that we as Americans follow the Constitution to the letter of the law.
How do you, just on a personal basis, though, since you have that transition now, and he's got his people in there as far as the U.S. attorneys in the state of Mississippi?
Well, actually, he doesn't. I mean, that's the fact that not a lot of folks are understanding is this administration is not putting a priority on getting U.S. attorneys out to the field.
So we still have Trump appointees in there?
We still have first assistant United States attorneys, which were the second in commands for Chad Lamar in Oxford and myself here in Jackson are still the acting U.S. attorneys here in the state of Mississippi.
So did you have to leave that? You didn't have to leave that position?
I did. I believe it was February, the president asked for the resignation of all U.S. attorneys, but I left in January before that happened.
Without any consideration administration who is the next man coming in.
That's correct, and that's been the case probably since the Clinton administration. Every president has come in and asked U.S. attorneys to step down.
Well,
so
if you're not going to make that political. For political reasons, all you're doing is just gumming things up as far as somebody else has got to come in and catch up on what you were doing.
Well, and it's kind of like here in the city of Jackson when I was U.S. attorney, the leadership viewed me as a political appointee, and I was appointed by the president and confirmed by the Senate. But at the same time, my job was to do justice and to seek the truth and to do my job to the best of my ability. But a number of people viewed us as political, and so we tried not to do anything political, and I think we did a heck of a job not doing anything political. But at the same time, the president has his prerogative, and he can pick his U.S. attorney as he sees.
Is anybody nominated for that?
No, nobody has been nominated either in the Northern District or the Southern District of Mississippi.
What?
It's not a priority for this administration,
No,
Paul. Prosecuting crime, bringing down crime, addressing crime is not a priority in this administration.
I laugh at this one because some of the people who have to come before Senator Kennedy in Washington
try to handle their cases.
Why won't you answer my questions, Judge?
I'm sorry, Senator.
Here's my final one. What's your favorite color?
Blue.
Good. That was easy. I don't understand why you won't answer my questions. And you're not the first nominee that has come forward that refuses to answer a single question in 5 minutes. How can I vote for you if you won't answer my questions?
Well, Senator, if systemic racism were a matter that came before me,
I didn't ask that. I stipulated that wasn't going to be the case. I'm just asking your opinion. You sit on the bench. You think it's systemically racist. But I do understand your favorite color, and I appreciate that.
If I had the opportunity just to spend the time with having him and Mike Leach in the same room with a conversation,
I don't know if you could word it, Paul.
No, I wouldn't talk. Believe me, I would just listen.
To go back to DOJ for a second, this administration, the Department of Justice, is not focused on really combating crime. It's more focused on going after parents and really attacking them. That for what they perceive. I mean, they have said parents are akin to domestic terrorism. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's what they have said by implementing this memo that has gone out to the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's offices throughout the country, saying you need to put a plan in place to address harassment, intimidation, and threats made against school boards. And that's incredible.
Yeah, where is the Durham report? I mean, where does that?
Only John Durham knows that question, Paul.
I mean, that's just ridiculous. I mean, it's absolutely unbelievable because we have the Steele dossier. And we have that story. I think Lindsey Graham said this.
But I always assumed the Russian subsource was some guy in Russia deep in the bowels of the Kremlin feeding this stuff to Christopher Steele. The subsource was a senior Russian researcher at the Brookings Institute and an employee of Christopher Steele living in the United States. He calls up a bunch of people in Russia. Where do you think this information came from? It came from the Russian intelligence service. They played this guy like a fiddle. This was Russian disinformation. Some FBI agent recognized it as such. He told Steele, here's what I found, but it's not really reliable. Be cautious. Steele turned it into a Tom Clancy novel. The FBI bought it hook, line, and sinker and got warrants with it. The most successful political operation in the history of the Democratic Party, because Steele was on the payroll of the Democratic Party and Hillary Clinton's campaign.
And Hillary Clinton ought to be in jail for it, to be honest with you.
My hope is once John Durham finishes his investigation, that the American people will see that this Steele dossier and this Russian collusion theory was one of the biggest hoaxes perpetrated on America that we've ever seen.
Crime in the state of Mississippi, and also what's going on in the classrooms, and what's the involvement as far as the courts are concerned. We'll go through all those subjects coming up in a moment or two. Friday, back with the former U.S. Attorney Mike Hurst in the private sector now.
I am. Phillips Dunbar, great law firm down here in Jackson.
Yeah. All right, let's go into the first of these, the edict from thank God this guy wasn't chosen as a Supreme Court justice.
Senator Tom Cotton said it beautifully.
Yes, he did.
Thank God he wasn't on the Supreme Court, and frankly, he told Merrick Garland he should resign over this crazy memo that he sent out to U.S. Attorney's Office and the FBI to coordinate on parents going to school board meetings.
But if you've listened to this, I mean, he sounds about as sleepy and as uninformed and involved in that office as Joe Biden is in his. I mean, it's a little scary.
I'm a little more worried about Merrick Garland because I think he is whomever is pulling the strings behind him. They are in full belief of this theory, this notion that that parents should have nothing to do with what their children are taught in schools, which is exactly why Terry McAuliffe lost the Virginia gubernatorial race.
Yeah.
And so you see this memo come out. If you go back to that hearing they had about a week or two ago, Senator Kennedy was played a while ago. He asked Merrick Garland, has DOJ, has the FBI investigated these quote-unquote threats made to school boards before issuing this memo? Yeah. And Merrick Garland admitted they had not. You know, another senator asked him, the School Board Association sent that letter saying domestic terrorism, parents are domestic terrorists, which led to DOJ implementing this memo. School board administration rescinded that letter. And the question was asked to Merrick Garland, why did you not also rescind your memo? And he had zero answer for that. So, Paul, just to put this in perspective, we as parents have almost no greater duty than to keep our kids safe and to make sure they are educated and brought up in the right way. And for the DOJ to be weaponized in this manner, to be used against parents who go to school boards, who exercise their First Amendment right to assemble, to petition their government, to speak. I mean, this is absolutely insane.
I think, to his part, what Merrick Garland said, look, I just wrote the memo because the National Association asked me to write it, and that's all. I don't know anything else.
Right.
Well, you know, the buck stops with you. Tom Cotton, as you referenced, did say this.
Told Senator Klobuchar that this memorandum was about meetings and coordination. Yeah. Meetings and coordination. Well, I have in my hand right here a letter from one of your U.S. attorneys to all of the county attorneys, to the attorney general, to all sheriffs, to the school board association of his state, in which he talks about federal investigation and prosecution.
Now, that's big time. I mean, because, I mean, I'm sure there are a lot of things, as he said, where there's 150 people in this office, and we don't know if everything's going on. But when it comes to your desk, and it's that important, and you sign a memo and you sign on to this thing, your name's on it.
Absolutely. And he obviously has no idea the weight of the United States Attorney General has in issues like this. I mean, Paul, think about this for a second. A parent goes to a school board. They say something that they don't agree with the school board. That school board member can feel harassed because they disagree. They can feel intimidated because because a parent wants to be involved in their children's life. The reason we have issues with kids and delinquency and crime from youth is because parents are not involved. And to have the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office to be injected into this core value that we as parents should be educating our kids is incredible.
It is kind of ironic because for the last 2 or 3 years, I've really focused on this program, telling people to get involved in the school board. And then this was kind of like lanyard because it's a perfect example. And sometimes we have to look in the mirror. The reason these things happened in Loudoun County in Virginia is simply because the parents let them do it.
Right.
They didn't pay any attention to it. And to be honest with you, I don't think we have that much of a problem in this state, but it doesn't need to be a problem. And it could be a problem before you know it, because the people who is the lobbying group, the people who are pushing candidates and they're supporting candidates, sending material saying this guy or this lady is a perfect, you need to do it, she loves the kids, is the parents' campaign.
Well, and the thing that is crazy to me as a former United States attorney, as the former chief federal law enforcement officer for this district, is there is no role for the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office to be involved in a local matter such as this. What is the federal crime here, Paul? The only federal crime that the DOJ could come up with is this crazy notion from the School Board Association that parents are domestic terrorists.
Yep.
That's insane.
Well, it shows you how far they have gone, and somewhere on a school board, whether their name is that or not, you know there's a Karen or two.
Yeah.
And when there's a Karen or two, he's going to flip out, and I feel threatened. My space has been invaded, and if they want to set an example.
And if a school board member's life is threatened, that's an issue for local law enforcement. That is not something the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office should be involved with.
On and on and on and on. Let's talk about the crime, because I know one of the things that you tried to do is bring the people together in Jackson and you were actually rebuffed. Now, you went on the air with me. You were very nice about it during the tenure as you were in an office. But off the air, and I know that you were having some difficulty with that, all the way from when the president came to town and would have been more than willing to sit down with the city of Jackson people and see how he could help.
Right.
And they rebuffed him.
It's incredible. When I first became U.S. Attorney, we had cooperation. We had kumbaya. Everyone was on the same page. We implemented this program called Project Eject, which was not only prosecuting violent criminals like carjacking, like just felons with guns, drugs, all this other stuff, which we did effectively, but we also had components going into schools and getting to kids before they got into crime, going to offenders who were released after jail to try to get them reintegrated in society, trying to get other support around that, not just prosecution, but awareness to the public of what was going on. And while that worked the first few years, we did that because everyone was working together. Towards the end, we started getting political pushback. We started seeing that the leadership in Jackson, and not all, some of the leadership in Jackson, specifically in the mayor's office, didn't want to have anything to do with what we were doing. And I don't understand that, because in the first few years we did this Project Eject, violent crime in the city of Jackson actually started to fall, actually started to decline. But now we're on target to hit 150 murders. Let me put that in perspective. When I started as U.S. Attorney in 2017, I think we had 68 murders. 68 murders, Paul. Less than half of what we are projecting to have this year. And when I tried to bring federal law enforcement in my last year in 2020, we were absolutely and directly rebuffed by the mayor of Jackson.
The toxicity was two things: your success and your political affiliation.
Yeah, and it breaks my heart, because I could care less who gets the credit.
Yeah.
What I saw was going into homes of grandparents trying to raise their grandkids, going into homes of single mothers trying to raise a bunch of kids. Those men and those women trapped in the city of Jackson because they don't have the resources to move out, and trying to live their best life and raise these kids in this environment where there is zero support from the leadership of Jackson.
You look at the drive-by shootings, the shootings on the interstate and places like that. It's out of control now. If you were advising a Senate committee panel to where we need some changes, what would your advice be as far as recidivism, as far as having some of these people who are committing atrocities and they should be in jail?
The problem, Paul, that I see is not that we don't have sufficient or effective laws on the books.
Okay, what's the problem?
I think the problem is a number of things. One is we have broken families in Jackson.
I understand all that in a limited time here. But as far as what we can do, or the legislature can do, and they can't do anything about that, but as far as the sentencing laws and everything else, should there be some changes there?
I think the changes need to be, we need to have judges in Jackson that enforce laws. We need to have an effective and a police force that is resourced to be able to enforce the law.
But these are elective judges for the most
That's
part.
correct. That's correct. That's what I'm saying. I don't know if there's something that our legislature can do. It has to start with the people of Jackson. It has to start with a leadership mentality in Jackson. Right now, there is no leadership in Jackson.
You saw a lot of people on the streets that shouldn't be there when you were.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And, the mental health issue is real in Jackson.
Yes.
The poverty issue is real in Jackson, but it has to start with our families, and it has to start with the people. There has to be a groundswell to change Jackson for the better.
Thanks for playing co-host with me for this hour.
Thanks
I've
for
enjoyed
having me.
Thank you so very much.
Enjoyed it.
Happy holidays.
You
I'll
too.
say it to you early.
Absolutely.
Mike.